what's really the headline for you right now in the robotics industry?
Yeah, I would say that there's certainly a lot of interest in humanoids right now, and there's certainly a lot of companies that have bought one, and there's a lot of proof of concepts taking place today. So I think that's something that's very obvious even when you're just at the show. The question will be, will that become scalable? Will that be, applicable? Because there's a lot of competing technologies that are available today that can do those exact type of applications. And I think there's a bit of a, sort of right now, there's a bit of call it an obsession with the form factor more so than there is, what's the function of those humanoids.
My other Justin, Justin King, what's your take?
No, I mean, for me, I guess the data shows that the fundamentals are still very strong. I think that's really encouraging for us as an industry. And I think robotics clearly is addressing the core customer needs. So for me, more than any technology, I think the things that we talked about for trends are reinforcing the need for like less friction in the customer experience. I think ultimately, if we can be driving more effective deployments, integration, faster ROI, I think these are enablers for that. What we saw just now, the core trends, it's very encouraging. And as we talked before, I think the show this year feels there's a lot of energy at the show. It's exciting, so I feel like we're really much on the front foot.
But what's your headline for this group?
Well, I think that we have to keep in mind what's been hurting robots is not just the technology that needs to advance, which it is. You got to be aware that the customers haven't been here. We look at America manufacturing, and it's been in decline for 40 years, up till 2018, and we've had a reversal and a slow reshoring. That's accelerated. And because we have so many US manufacturers opening up facilities, the need for robots has just accelerated. As Mike Chico said at FANUC, it's going to be explosive growth. So the physical AI is absolutely needed because we do not have the workforce to manage this massive reshoring.
Jan?
Yeah, so I think a lot of points were already mentioned. Looking a little bit at the preliminary data we have seen, they are quite interesting. So, of course, there were some macro and microeconomical impacts, obviously, but the trend is there. So the robotics is a growing industry. What I would like to discuss, and I think we will come to that later, is how can we enable that other industries, markets, application can benefit from our technology. And I think that's we have physical AI, we have other technologies which are advancing. In the end of the day, what is important, that we are solving the customer problem, and that must be in the forefront of all our actions. But I think we will come to that later.
And Michael?
Yeah, I think that the headlines that are out there are very hypey, in my opinion. But I think that what I take from those is there's an unprecedented amount of attention being paid to and money being put into true robotics research. And as a roboticist, I don't think I've ever seen anything on this scale. And I'm excited to see what comes out of that. Right? It's not necessarily going to look like something out of the Jetsons or Star Wars. But I think what we are going to get is some really interesting and compelling new robotics technology that's going to end up unlocking a lot of really cool growth opportunity that we may not even foresee right now.
And Mr. Brown, starting with you, where do we see these opportunities right now outside of automotive? What areas are you and your company really excited about and looking at?
Yeah, I think logistics is one that sticks out the most. I mean, that's an area that can really be enabled with AI. And you've seen, I think it'll be interesting to see when they break down the other category if where logistics shows up there, because there's so much variability in a warehouse. Things like robotic picking of SKUs that the robot's never seen before are really being enabled by AI. So I think that's an industry that's extremely exciting and is poised for a ton of growth for robotics in general.
Mr. King.
I think for us, I think it would be outside of automotive, the semi space in particular. I think we're seeing a lot of interest. So both front end and back end processes, but and legacy fabs in particular as well. So operations that are looking to improve their automation processes being enabled by MoMAs, for example, and also life sciences. I think there is increasing demand there as well. Both of those spaces, we see a lot of sort of fundamental demand just for capacity, like Jane mentioned in her talk.
What industries are you excited about right now? Anything that our panelists haven't touched on so far?
Yeah. So just coming on the topic of automotive, we have heard there's quite a lot in the presentation, and automotive is and was the key driver of this technology, and also to get the robot density out in the market. So the good thing is, first of all, it will stay as a growth driver. And secondly is, I think that now it's the time that really other industries can benefit from all of the learnings from the technology which was advancing over the last decades, so that they can benefit from it. So we have a lot of wisdom now and experience, and we see this in food, in pharma. You have mentioned logistics. So there are new markets and application coming up. But what is important for me is that we are leveraging this in other industries, but we need to also develop the technology. Looking into the interlogistics, so I'm coming from this industry originally, and we had really a hard time to find the right applications. Looking at bin picking applications, palletizing, mixed case palletizing, and so on. So you need some more technology, vision, sensor fusion, and so on. And I think that's now coming on an industrial level, not only pilot projects, and I think that will be a good step forward in developing the industry.
What are you seeing right now that has you particularly interested in terms of the sectoral space?
Well, I mean, look where the reshoring's coming in. Automotive is strong because they're robot ready. They know how to use robots. But we have a huge reshoring in semiconductor and electronics. $2 trillion I've calculated personally. And most of these plants are not built. Some have been. Much, much more are going to be finished in the next 5 to 10 years. So we're going to see this surge that we have now just beginning to inkle out. Is going to accelerate. The other big market I see reshoring quite a bit is pharmaceutical and life sciences. Massive amount of drugs and medicines and testing and labs are being created here in the U.S. As part of the reshoring initiative. So we're going to see a lot in that sector. And then we have this massive general industry, mining, agriculture, appliances. It just goes on and on and on that are reshoring, that are coming together, and we're going to see that general industry nomenclature continue to climb.
You know, as putting your roboticist hat on here, right? How are we seeing the technology sort of enabled this sectoral expansion? You know, what's been some of the breakthroughs that have allowed us to now talk about some of these spaces that were brought up by this panel? And Jan touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can go a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, I remember us, back in 2008 when the kind of early kind of cobot sort of companies started to take off. We talked a lot then about how we could reduce the barriers to programming and, very high expert kind of engineering work required to start integrating automation. And some progress was made there, but I think these modern technologies are going to take that even a step further. Yeah. And that's going to lower the barriers, especially to a lot of small and medium manufacturers that really, those barriers are prohibitive for them, right? They don't have access to lots of money to pay systems integrators. They don't have the expertise in-house necessarily. And I think that this is going to enable them to adopt automation and grow their own business in a way that we maybe haven't seen before.
Jan, Michael just touched on how the technology has changed. How have the conversations changed?
What has changed are exactly the point which was just mentioned, is really how can we easily deploy robots, how can we easily keep them running. So this barrier needs to be lowered down, and this gives us also the opportunity, exactly as you said, that we go and target now the small and medium-sized companies, and this has changed a lot. So they really want, they see the benefit from the big corporates. It's everyone is talking about it, so they want to go in there, but this is an investment. They do not have the people, they cannot afford directly, and they need to have it simple, which will also have a certain or impact on the system integrator business. But I think that's kind of the big step we need to go.
There's this incredible untapped market, though, right? Especially in the United States. We see all this amazing technology out here, all the shiny bells and whistles, but so much of manufacturing is still done in small shops, small organizations. How do robotics begin to get in those doors?
Yeah, if you look at the dynamics of a lot of those small shops, there's one thing that sticks out, and it's high mix and high variability is oftentimes what you see in those small to medium-sized manufacturers. And I think the thing that, we're using the words a lot, but that is one thing that AI enables, is AI enables robotics to be easily retrained to do a different application or a different SKU, day in and day out. So that is definitely an enabling technology. It's got to get to the point where it's, I'll call it democratized and easily consumable by those small and medium manufacturers, but it's definitely that type of AI perception technology is going to enable those people to automate those tasks that they've always wanted to.
Yep. Justin King, thoughts?
Yeah, I would say like Michael was speaking to, to the extent that some of these technologies help us to improve training and to sort of lower the barrier for entry, I think we'll see strong adoption in the small and medium size manufacturers.
Bob, this still seems pretty hard to me, though, this breaking into this next layer. How bullish are you on the expansion of robots into small and medium-sized operations?
Well, let me start. When I was running ATI, Industrial Automation, a robotic end effector company, our customers were telling us they had to have a ROI of 1 or 2 years. And that is really hard to justify the robotics. And the reason they only wanted 1 year ROI, like 1 year, how can you justify, how can we do that? Well, they said, we don't know that the product's going to change, and when the product changes, we got to start over again because the robots aren't flexible enough. That is what we're going to solve. We're going to make robots easier to implement, easier to use, and when there's a change, it's going to be a simple task to get that done. If it's not done automatically through physical AI. And the bottom line is, now we don't have to have an ROI of 1 year. We can have an ROI maybe of 3 years. Goodness gracious, what about 5-year ROI? If you open up the ROI, you are expanding the breadth of robotics.
I see Michael smiling. I can't imagine you're having too many conversations where people are willing to accept that.
So I would say it's more these 1 or 2 years, what we typically see. But I think that's also a process. Yeah, exactly as you said, it's kind of they need to see the benefit. Yeah, and they need to see that it's really working. And I think we are in certain technologies, we are in demonstrations, we are in pilot projects, but we need to really roll this out, that this is an industry standard, that we can really leverage this new technology on physical AI, really adapting. I'm not calling for every change, my supplier, my integrator, and these, when they feel these benefits, I think there will be also a shift in the mindset that they are accepting those kind of developments also related to the ROI.
Justin?
I still think the ROI conversations are still very short, but hopefully we can change the conversation up where if you have a robot that's enabled in physical AI, that it can do much more for a much longer time with without having certainty in what a customer's product mix is going to be. So, but as of right now, I think it's still, we're stuck in that very short-term way of thinking as far as ROI.
Michael, the question I would ask you here is, as small and medium-sized companies look to adapt to these technologies, what can they learn from some of the bigger players? What lessons do you have for some of these small companies as they look to deploy?
I think there's a few roles that the large companies can play. Some of it is lessons learned, right? And pushing ahead a lot of the market of the nominally commoditized hardware in mobile robots and arms and grasping and so forth. But I think there's a little bit of a flywheel too of, as large companies learn a lot about robotics, Amazon released an entire picking data set that has really been underpinned a lot of other kind of innovation in robotic manipulation across a lot of industry. Large companies can play a role like that, right? Share the learnings, but share the gains out of it for other companies to take and run with, and that's just going to strengthen the industry, strengthen the technology available, strengthen what vendors are out there, and that's good for everyone, I think.
What's your sort of outlook for the robotics market over the next 12 months? Scale of 1 to 10 or whatever metric you want to use, how bullish or non-bullish are you on the next 12 months?
I'm extremely bullish because I think we've got new technology on the forefront that's going to more democratize robotics and allow more users to use it. And I think we've had a generation of people that have come up through college and they've been exposed to robotics. It's not unusual at all. It's actually unusual to go to any type of engineering school that doesn't have a robotics lab. So people have grown up and learned and become comfortable with robots, and then they get into the workforce and they want to deploy them. So like I'm really bullish about it, not only because of the technology that's enabling to do it more, but just the workforce that's coming up, and especially in the engineering community, that it's basically second nature to them.